Have you ever wondered if you're learning the right skills to stay competitive in an AI-driven world? With AI evolving and reshaping web development as we know it, we can no longer rely on outdated cookie-cutter websites. After all, even AI tools like V0 can generate basic code. But while AI is getting better at writing simple code, what it can't do is create those jaw-dropping user interfaces that make people stop and say,
Wow.
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 Wow. Wow.
today is your chance to stand out because in this full tutorial, we're going to build the best HTML, CSS, and JavaScript portfolio project you can currently find on YouTube. Before we dive in, let's take a quick look at what we'll be creating. If you're new to web development, you might think this project is too advanced. But trust me, with your determination and my step-by-step guidance, we're going to complete this together. I'll break down every step in clear detail, making sure nothing is left out. By the end of this course, not only will you have an amazing portfolio to showcase, but you'll also gain a deep understanding of essential concepts, from basic fundamentals to advanced techniques like Flexbox, CSS Grid, pseudo-elements, text gradients, stunning scroll animations, smooth transitions, and a fully animated professional sidebar designed for mobile devices. And don't forget, your like and subscribe is a huge support for our growing channel. It helps us create more content like this, so if you find this valuable, make sure to hit those buttons. Now, without further ado, let's start the show. Before we begin coding, it's essential to prepare some resources, including images and videos. These can be found in the GitHub repository linked in the description box. Head to the repository, and once you're there, take a moment to give it a star to support the project. After that, locate the two folders within the repository. Download all the files from these folders and organize them on your computer. A good approach is to create a main folder, and within it, separate subfolders for the images and videos. Next, open your preferred code editor. Drag and drop the folder you just organized into the editor. First, let's begin by creating the three essential files for this project: index.html, style.css, and app.js. Inside the index.html file, we will start by setting up the basic HTML structure. Customize the title of the page. Next, we'll link the CSS file within the head section of the HTML document. Inside the body tag, we will add a script element to link the app.js file. This will allow us to include JavaScript functionality later, and then open the project using Live Server for live previews. To organize our layout, create a div element with the class name container. This container will hold all of our sections and elements. The next step is to add a background video to the page. Create a video element and link the galaxy.mp4 file in its src attribute. Set the type attribute to video/mp4 for compatibility. Additionally, enable the following properties: loop, autoplay, muted, and place inline, which will ensure the video plays continuously, automatically, without sound, and inline on mobile devices. Lastly, assign the class name backvid to the video element to style it appropriately. Now let's adjust the size and position of the video using CSS. First, open the CSS file and target the body tag. Begin by removing the default margin and padding that the browser applies. After that, select a font family of your choice and set the text color to light gray for a clean and modern look. Next, target the .container class. Set its position to relative to allow for proper positioning of child elements. Then, set the width and height to 100% to ensure that the container fills the entire viewport. This will help maintain a flexible layout for the rest of your project. Set display to flex and the flex direction to column to arrange the elements vertically. Use align items center to center the content horizontally, and add a gap of 100 px between each section for spacing. Next, target the .backVid class, which represents the background video. Set its position to fixed so that it stays in place as you scroll. Then, set right 0 and bottom 0 to position the video in the bottom right corner. Add a z-index of -1 to ensure the video stays behind all other content. Finally, apply a mix blend mode of overlay to give the video an interesting blending effect with the rest of the page. To make the video responsive, use aspect ratio to adjust its size for different screen sizes. For the max aspect ratio, target the .backVid class again and set width to auto and height to 100%. For the min aspect ratio, copy the code above but switch the width to 100% and height to auto. This will make sure the video properly adapts to all screen sizes. Now that the video is positioned and sized correctly, let's move on to creating the header section. In your HTML file, below the video element, create a header tag. Inside this header, first create a div with the class name left. Inside the left div, place an img element where you can add your logo or any other image you'd like. Then create an h1 tag with your name or brand. Below the left class, create an unordered list with 3 list items. Each list item should contain an anchor tag, which you will name accordingly. Next, below the unordered list, create another div with the class name boxIcons. Inside this div, create 3 anchor tags, A for the icons. For the icons, visit boxicons.com. Once there, click the Usage option in the top right corner, scroll down until you see the Usage as a font section, and copy the provided code. Paste this code into the head section of your HTML file. Next, return to the homepage of boxicons.com and search for the icons you need, such as the YouTube icon. Click on the icon of your choice, select the font option, and copy the code. Paste this code into the first anchor tag in your HTML. Repeat this process for the other 2 icons. Now, we have all the necessary elements for the header. We can proceed with styling them using CSS to complete the layout. Let's push the media queries to the bottom and start by targeting the header. Set the display to flex, position it as absolute, and ensure it's aligned at the top with top 0, right 0, and left 0. Use align items center to vertically center the content, and justify content space between to spread out the elements evenly. Set the height to 70px and give the background a semi-transparent white color with background RGBA 255 255 255 0.12. Apply a blur effect using backdrop filter blur 10px for a modern touch and add padding 0.30px for spacing. To give it depth, use box shadow. Finally, add z-index 999 to ensure the header always stays on top of other elements. Now let's style the individual elements inside the header. For the .left class, set display flex and align items center to make sure the items inside this div are aligned properly. Set the width of the logo image to 40px and apply a margin of 0.15px to give it some spacing. For the h2 element in the left class, we want part of its text to have a different color. To achieve this, go back to the HTML file and wrap the portion of text you want to style inside a span element. Then, add an inline style to the span and set its color to your special blue. This makes the header more visually appealing. Next, target the unordered list inside the header. Set its display to flex and justify content space between to evenly space the items. Set the width to 30% and apply padding 15px for some internal spacing. Add rounded corners with border radius 50px and a transparent black background color, giving it a blur effect with backdrop filter blur 5px. To enhance the design, use box shadows. For the list items inside the unordered list, set list style none to remove the bullet points. For the anchor tags, remove the underline with text decoration none. Set the text color to white, make the font bold with font weight 700, and apply margin 010px for spacing between the links. Next, target the dot box icons class and set its display to flex. Add a gap of 40px between the icons for better spacing. For the anchor tags inside the dot box icons, set display flex, align items, center, and justify content center to center the icons properly. Set the font size to 20px and make the width and height both 30px to give them a consistent size. Add a border of 2px solid RGBA. Remove the underline with text decoration none and use a light gray color for the icons. And set border radius 50% to make them circular. For a hover effect on the icons, change the background color when the user hovers over them and set the icon color to black. Add a box shadow to make the transition smooth. Apply transition 0.3s to the anchor tags. Now that the header section is fully styled, we can move on to adding the black hole video. Go back to your HTML file and below the header, create a div with the class name black hole box. Inside this div, add a video element, set its sarcr attribute to the file path of your black hole video, assign the type as video//mp4, and include the properties loop, autoplay, muted, and place inline to place seamlessly in the background. Now let's style its size and position. First, target black hole box in the CSS. Set its position to absolute, align it at the top with top 0, and set its width to 100%. Use display flex with justify content center to center its content. Next, target the video element inside .black hole box, set its width to 100%, and adjust its placement by setting margin top 23.5% to achieve proper positioning. To seamlessly blend the black hole animation with the background video, apply Mix Blend Mode Lighten to .black hole box, allowing it to interact naturally with the background elements. Now that the black hole effect is set up, go back to your HTML file and below the .black hole box, create a new section with the class name Hero. Inside this section, add a div with the class name Hero Info, which will contain all the text content for the Hero section. Within Hero Info, create another div with the class name Hero Info Title. Inside this div, first add a sketch icon from Boxicons. After the icon, insert the text Front-End Developer Portfolio, which serves as a brief introduction. Next, add an H1 element with the text providing the best project experience, making it the primary headline of the Hero section. Below the H1, insert a P paragraph with a description that complements the heading and introduces your work. Now, create a button below the paragraph that includes an icon and text. Visit boxicons.com/again, search for a send icon, and copy its code. Paste the icon inside the button and add the text, "Contact me," beside it. Now let's move on to styling the Hero section with CSS. First, target .hero and set position relative, display flex with 100%, height 100 VH, and use align items center with justify content space between to properly align the content. Next, target hero info and set its position to absolute, placing it left 5 cent from the edge for proper alignment. For .hero info title, assign it a hard purple color. Add padding APX 5px and set border 1px solid purple, making it slightly transparent. Set the width to 240px, apply a dark transparent background color, and add a subtle box shadow for depth. Finally, round the corners using border radius 50px. Now target the H1 inside .hero info. Set its font size 60px, max width 600px, font weight 700, and line height 70px to ensure it stands out. Add margin top 40px and margin bottom 30px to create proper spacing between elements. Now let's style the paragraph inside our hero info section. Set its maximum width to 550 pixels to keep it well contained, and adjust the line height to 25 pixels for better readability. Add margin bottom of 40 pixels to create proper spacing, and set the font size to 20 pixels so that the text remains clear and easy to read. Next, let's move on to the button inside the hero info section. We'll set its text color to white and apply padding of 15 pixels by 35 pixels to make it more prominent. Give it rounded corners with a border radius of 10 pixels. For the border, we'll use a 2-pixel solid purple color, matching the title's theme. As for the background color, we'll reuse the same shade as the title to maintain design consistency. Adding a box shadow will help give the button a slight elevation, making it more visually appealing. Finally, change the cursor to a pointer so users know it's clickable. To enhance user interaction, we'll add a hover effect. When the user hovers over the button, we'll increase the box shadow, making it stand out even more. We'll also apply a smooth transition effect, ensuring a fluid animation. For the main heading inside the hero info section, we'll create an eye-catching text gradient animation for specific words. To achieve this, we'll define a CSS class named gradient. Any text element assigned this class will automatically adopt the animated gradient effect. Now let's break down the styling. First, apply a linear gradient that moves from left to right. To ensure a seamless transition, make sure the first and last colors of the gradient are identical. Set the background size to 200% to allow for smooth movement. Use background clip text and WebKit backclip text to ensure that the gradient only affects the text itself. Finally, set WebKit text fill color transparent, which makes the text transparent, revealing the gradient underneath. Now, to make the gradient move dynamically, we'll define an animation named Animate Gradient. This animation will last 2.5 seconds, follow a linear motion, and loop infinitely. Using keyframes, we'll shift the background position from its starting point to 200%, creating a smooth, flowing effect. To apply this effect, go back to your HTML file, locate the H1 inside the hero info section, and wrap the specific words you want animated inside a span element. Then assign the gradient class to that span. In this case, we'll apply the animation to the words the best and experience. With these improvements, our hero section will now have a sleek, professional, and highly engaging design. Now let's add the hero video element to enhance the visual appeal of our hero section. Inside the hero section, right below the hero info div, create another div with the class name hero vid box. Inside this div, add a video element and link it to the hero video.mp4 file. Set its type to video/mp4 and include the following properties: autoplay, loop, muted, and place in line to ensure smooth playback across all devices without sound interruptions. Next, we need to adjust its size and position using CSS. First, target the .HeroVidBox class and set its position to absolute, positioning it 3% from the right to align it properly within the layout. Then, target the video element inside it and set its height to 900 pixels to ensure proper scaling on large screens. That completes the setup for our hero video, seamlessly integrating it into the design. As always, it's important to double-check your code for typos or errors to avoid any unexpected layout issues. Now let's add the final element to our hero section, which is the scroll down sign. This will be created using pseudo elements to give it a subtle animated effect. Navigate to your HTML file, and inside the hero section, right below the hero vid box div, create another div with the class name scroll down. Move to the CSS file and target the scroll down class. Set its height to 50 pixels and width to 30 pixels. Give it a 2-pixel solid border with a light gray color, and position it absolutely. To align it properly, set its left position to 48% and its bottom position to 8%, so it appears at the lower part of the hero section. Add a border radius of 50 pixels, make the cursor a pointer, and apply a box shadow for a soft depth effect. Next, we need to add the arrows inside the scroll down sign using pseudo elements. Use before and after for this. Leave the content empty, set the position to absolute, and adjust the top to 20 cent and left to 50 cent to position them centrally. Assign a height and width of 10 pixels and add a 2-pixel solid border with the same light gray color. To center the arrows properly, apply transform, translate Nijgen 50%, might have 100%, rotate 40 deg. To make them look like actual arrows, remove the top and left borders by setting them to transparent. Now let's define the scroll down animation for the arrows. Create a new animation called scroll down that runs for 2 seconds in an ease in out motion and loops infinitely. To create the scroll down arrow effect, we need 2 arrows stacked on top of each other. This will be achieved using pseudo elements. Target the pop before pseudo element of the scroll down class, set its top position to 30%, and apply an animation delay of 0.5s to create a smooth trailing effect. Now let's define the keyframes for the scroll down animation. At 0%, set its opacity to 0 to make it invisible at the start. From 30 to 60%, increase its opacity to 100 so it becomes fully visible. At 100%, move it downward to 90%, and set opacity back to 0 to create a fading effect as it scrolls down. There was a small mistake in the Y position. Instead of setting it to 100%, adjust it to -100% to ensure the movement is smooth and visually correct. Before moving forward, let's refine the overall design. Scroll up to the container class and assign a specific background color using the same hexadecimal color code to maintain consistency. Additionally, for the background video, change the mix blend mode from overlay to lightened, which will improve the visual integration of elements. Now that everything is looking great, let's move on to the next section, where we'll start working on the exciting info section to enhance the project further. In your HTML file, locate the hero section and directly below it, create a new section with the class name info section. Inside this section, start by adding an h1 element with the class section title and set its text to hello there to give it a welcoming touch. Below the h1, create a div with the class info cards. This will act as a container for all our info cards. Now, inside this info cards div, create the first card and assign it the class card. Um, each card will have an h1 element containing customizable text, a paragraph that provides informative content about your experience, an image element, which for this first card will be linked to the grid 1 image. Since we need 3 more cards, simply copy and paste this first card 3 more times to create them quickly. Now, modify the text content of the second card to reflect different information. For the third card, change the text again, but this time, instead of using an image, replace the image element with a video element. Link this video element to the globe MP4 file, set its type to video MP4, and add the following attributes: autoplay, loop, muted, and place inline to ensure it plays smoothly. Finally, update the content of the fourth card with new information and link the appropriate image to it. Now let's move on and give our modern info section a beautiful and professional design using CSS. First, target the info section and set its display to flex, flex direction to column, align items to center, width to 80%, and add a margin top of 100 px. Next, style the section title class, which applies to all section titles by using the same class name. Set its font size to 40 px and font weight to 700 to make it stand out. Now, target the info cards class, which contains all our cards. Set its display to grid. Use grid template columns to create 3 auto-sized columns. Add a gap of 20 px. Set width to 100%, height to 100%, and a margin top of 30 px for spacing. Style the card class by setting its display to flex, aligning items to flex start, and justifying content to center. Set its position to relative, width to auto, height to 40 vesh, and overflow to hidden to keep the content inside. Add a 1px solid border with a gray color. Apply a hexadecimal background color. And finally, set the border radius to 20px for smooth corners. For the image inside each card, set width to 80%, height to 50%, and object fit to cover to maintain aspect ratio. Now, target the H1 inside the cards and set its position to absolute, margin to 0, distance from the bottom to 40%, and left to 5%. Set font size and set a z-index of 1 to keep it above other elements. Give it a light gray color. For the paragraph inside the cards, set position to absolute, bottom to 3%, left to 5%, z-index to 1, max width to 300 pxs, color to gray, font size to 13px, and line height to 20px for readability. Next, style the video element by setting its margin top to 10%, width to 70%, height to 50%, object fit to cover, and apply mix blend mode to lighten to integrate it smoothly with the background. Now, for the third card, add a button. Navigate back to your HTML and inside the third card, create a button element. Search for a link icon on boxicons.com, copy its font icon code, and paste it inside the button along with the text, "Contact me." For styling, target the button inside the card and apply the same styles as the Hero section button. Scroll up, find the Hero button styles, copy them, and paste them here, but make the buttons slightly smaller. Set its position to absolute, bottom to 5%, and left to 5%. Now, add a hover effect so that when the user hovers over the button, the box shadow increases and opacity decreases to 0.7 for a nice interactive effect. Let's also add a hover effect for the cards so they respond visually when hovered. To make the transition smoother, set a 0.3-second transition for the card class. Next, fix the grid layout to make the third card span 2 rows. Increase its height to 83 VH so that it occupies the space of 2 rows in the grid. Adjust its paragraph by setting its bottom to 12%, and it's H1 to 21% for proper alignment. For the fourth card, set its grid column to span 2 rows so that it takes double the width. Adjust its paragraph max width to 650px, and its H1 bottom distance to 35% for a balanced layout. That's it for the info section. It looks great and modern now. If you've made it this far, amazing job, my friend. You're proving that you have what it takes to create beautiful UI designs. Let's refine our hero section before moving forward. First, remove the z-index from the container class to avoid layering conflicts. Then locate the black hole box and set its z-index to -1, ensuring it sits beneath the container background. Finally, modify the mix blend mode of the hero video, changing it from difference to lighten for a smoother visual effect. With these adjustments complete, we can now focus on the My Project section. Below the Info section, introduce a new section with the class My Project. Inside, create an H1 title labeled My Projects to maintain consistency with previous sections. Following this, add a div with the class Project Card, which will serve as a container for each project. Each project card consists of 2 main elements. 1, a video preview showcasing the project. 2, an info section providing details and a website link. To build the first project card, start by creating a div with the class project-vidbox inside project card. Within this video box, insert a video element and set its source to project1.mp4. Directly beneath the video box, add another div with the class project.info. Inside this info section, place an H1 for the project title, followed by a paragraph that briefly describes the project. Conclude with a button that invites users to visit the project's website. Inside the button, insert a link icon found on boxicons.com alongside the text website for clarity. Before proceeding with additional project cards, the next step is to style this first one to evaluate its appearance. With this foundation in place, we can refine and expand the project section seamlessly. Let's move forward. Start by targeting the .myProjects class and setting it to display flex with a flex direction of column to ensure that all project cards are stacked in a structured and organized way. To maintain proper spacing between the different elements, set a gap of 10%. Aligning the items to the center ensures a clean and balanced look. Set its position to relative, define the width as 80%, and give it a height of 100 VH to take up the full viewport height. For spacing purposes, add a margin top of 200px, and to allow flexibility when adjusting the layout, set the margin bottom temporarily to 700px. Next, focus on styling the individual project cards by targeting the .project card class. Set it to display flex, ensuring that its elements are aligned properly. Define its width as 100% and its height as 40%, making sure that each card maintains a proportional and balanced layout. To keep the content structured, align the items to the center and add a gap of 10%, creating a clear separation between elements. Use Justify Content Center to position everything in a way that looks well balanced across different screen sizes. Now, move on to styling the .project.vidbox class, which contains the project video. Set it to display flex and align its items to the center, while also applying Justify Content Center to maintain balance. Define the width as 50% and set its position to relative, making it easier to adjust and position within the layout. Change the cursor to pointer, signaling to users that this element is interactive. Set a min width of 400px to ensure the video does not shrink too much on smaller screens. Add a transition of 0.5 for smooth animation effects. Apply a mix blend mode of difference, creating a subtle and modern overlay effect that enhances the visual appeal. For the video element inside .project vidbox, apply object fit cover to make sure it maintains the correct aspect ratio without distortion. Set the width to 100%, allowing it to fill the container properly. To make the video stand out, add a soft box shadow, giving it a slight floating effect. Round the corners by setting a border radius of 20px, ensuring that it blends smoothly with the overall design. Add a transition of 0.5s to allow for smoother interactions. To enhance user engagement, implement a hover effect where the box shadow increases when hovered over, creating a dynamic and polished effect. After styling the first project card, go back to the HTML file and duplicate the .project card section 2 more times to create a total of 3 projects. This ensures consistency across all projects while maintaining the same structure and style. Once the structure is in place, proceed with styling the .project info section, which contains the project's title, description, and call to action button. Set its display to flex, and use flex direction column to stack the content properly. Align the items to start so that text appears properly aligned to the left, while keeping justify content center for a well-structured layout. Define the width as 50% and add a padding left of 10% to create spacing from the video. The heading H1 inside the .project info section should be styled to create a strong visual impact. Begin by setting the primary container's width to 90% and applying a font size of 25 pixels with a bold weight. Ensure that the text within does not wrap and set the top margin to 0. While also enforcing a maximum width of 450 pixels for optimal display. Next, focus on the paragraph contained within the project info section. This paragraph should have its width constrained to 90% with a minimum width of 300 pixels and a maximum width of 400 pixels. Additionally, set its bottom margin to 50 pixels and the top margin to 0 for consistent spacing. Moving on to the button styling, adopt the same visual style as our info card button, but increase its size slightly for improved visibility. Duplicate the existing code for the button, excluding any position-specific styling, and then paste the modified version accordingly. For the hover effect, again utilize the effect already implemented on our info card button, ensuring that you change any references from card to project info to maintain consistency and a refined appearance. Regarding the project vidbox, implement similar adjustments as described previously for exclusion and differentiation. Lastly, introduce a text gradient to emphasize keywords within the H1 heading of our project info card. To achieve this, modify your HTML by inserting a span element inside the H1 that contains the word gaming. Assign this span a class name of gradient. Once completed, copy this updated H1 and replace all other H1 elements inside each project info div with this enhanced version. Finally, update the videos and information on our project cards accordingly to reflect these changes. Now that the design is fully in place, it's time to add some interactivity to our project videos. We want these videos to start playing when a user hovers over them and to pause when the cursor moves away. To accomplish this, we'll incorporate JavaScript into our workflow. Begin by assigning a unique identifier to each video element in your HTML. For the first project, label the video with an ID such as project video-1. Similarly, for the second project card, use project video 2, and for the third project, assign project video 3. These distinct IDs ensure that each video can be targeted individually. With these IDs in place, open your app.js file and retrieve each video element by storing them in individual constant variables, one for each video, using the document.getElementById method. Next, to simplify the application of a single function across all video elements, create a constant named video list that aggregates your video variables into an array. This array will serve as a centralized collection of your video elements, making it simple to apply the same functionality to all of them. Next, iterate over the video list array using the forEach method. For every video in the list, attach an event listener that listens for a mouse over event. When a user hovers over the video, this event triggers a function that changes the video's state to play, immediately engaging the viewer. However, interactivity doesn't end there. To ensure that the videos do not continue playing unnecessarily, add another event listener for when the mouse leaves the video area. This listener will invoke a function that pauses the video, ensuring that the user experience remains seamless and that system resources are used efficiently. By setting up these event listeners, every time the user's cursor enters the area of any video, the video plays, and when the cursor exits, the video pauses. This approach leverages a single, elegant function for all video elements, reducing redundancy and keeping the code clean and manageable. If you have more experience or additional requirements, you might consider enhancing the code with conditional statements. But the provided method keeps things simple and effective. In essence, we have integrated an interactive functionality where our project videos are responsive to user behavior, playing on hover and pausing when not hovered using JavaScript. This method not only adds a layer of dynamism to your project, but also provides a scalable solution for future enhancements. Imagine enhancing the user experience by adding an animated call to action hover sign to the first video. To begin, update your HTML inside the video box of the first project card, just below the video element. Insert a div with the class name hoverSign. This div will serve as the container for the animated element. Next, switch to your CSS and target the hoverSign class. Set its position to absolute and apply display flex so that its content can be centered both horizontally and vertically using align items, center, and justify content, center. Specify a width of 30% and a height of 100 pixels. To bring the animation to life, employ CSS pseudo-element hoverSign class, both before and after. For each pseudo-element, choose a hand emoji as the content. Center the text, and position them absolutely. Set the font size to 50 pixels and position the elements with top 20% and left 40%. Then define an animation called hover animation with a duration of 3 seconds. Utilizing an ease and out timing function and set to repeat infinitely. The keyframes for this animation should translate the element from its initial position to the center of the video box while gradually increasing its box shadow, adding a subtle yet engaging effect. To further enhance the visual appeal, apply a border radius of 50% to create rounded corners. While the animation looks great, you don't want the hover sign to be visible when the user is actively hovering over the video. To achieve this, define an active class in your CSS that sets the display property of the .hoverSign element to none. Now move to your JavaScript in the app.js file. First, grab the hoverSign element by using document.querySelector and store it in a constant named hoverSign. Then, within the mouse over event listener, use the class list method to add the active class to the hoverSign element. This action will cause the animated call to action to disappear when the user hovers over the video. Conversely, within the mouse out event listener, remove the active class using the class list method, ensuring that the hover sign reappears when the user is not interacting with the video. This cohesive approach, combining HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, allows you to add a sophisticated animated feature that not only attracts attention but also enhances interactivity. With the hover sign dynamically appearing and disappearing based on user interaction, you've successfully elevated the engagement level of your project. Congratulations on completing one of the more challenging sections. Next, we will move on to the skills section. Imagine enhancing your portfolio by introducing a dedicated skills section immediately following your project section. Begin by updating your HTML structure. Directly below the My Project section, create a new section element and assign it the class Skills section. Within this section, the first element should be an h1 tag serving as the section title, containing the text My Skills. This heading sets the stage for the content that follows. Next, insert a div with the class SkillsBox. This container will house all the individual components of your skills section. Inside the skills box, start by adding an image element. Link this image to digitalbrain.png and assign it the class skillsImage. This image serves as a visual representation of your creative and cognitive abilities. Following the image, create a div with the class designer. Within this designer container, place an h1 element that carries the class gradient to apply a visually engaging gradient animation. This h1 should display the text designer alongside a laptop icon sourced from boycons.com, symbolizing your design expertise. Directly beneath this heading, include a paragraph element that provides informative details about your design experience, articulating your creative journey and skill set. After the designer div, add another div with the class coder. Inside this container, replicate the structure you used for the designer. Begin with an h1 element, also assigned the class gradient, which will showcase the text coder, paired with a code-related icon that reinforces your technical prowess. Beneath this heading, insert a paragraph element that offers insights into your coding experience, elaborating on the technical skills and projects that define your programming background. Once your HTML structure is complete, proceed to style these elements in your CSS. With careful styling, the skills section will not only convey your competencies in design and coding, but also enhance the overall aesthetic of your portfolio. Begin by targeting the overall skills section in your CSS. Set its display to flex with a column direction, ensuring that all its child elements are arranged vertically and centered by applying align items. Center. Additionally, assign it a relative position so that any absolutely positioned child elements can be aligned in reference to this container. Next, focus on the skills box, the primary container for all the content in your skills section. Style it with a width of 100% and a height of 90 VH to ensure it occupies a significant portion of the viewport. Set its position to relative and display to flex, configuring the layout so that its items are aligned at the start along the cross-axis, using align items start, while being centered horizontally with Justify Content Center. Now, turn your attention to the image element within the skills box. Define its width as 70% to make it prominently visible while preserving balance with the other content. To create a soft, blended visual effect, apply a mixed blend mode of lighten and set the opacity to 0.7, ensuring the image gently integrates with the background and other design elements. For the designer portion, which highlights your creative expertise, position its container absolutely within the skills box. Set the display to flex and the flex direction to column so that the heading and accompanying paragraphs stack neatly. Align the items to the start to maintain a clean left alignment and position the container 25% from the top and 5% from the left of the skills box. Limit its maximum width to 300 pixels, ensuring the content remains concise and visually appealing. The coder section should mirror the designer's styling for consistency. Position its container absolutely, display as flex with a column direction, and align the items to the start. However, instead of anchoring it from the left, position it from the right, placing it 25% from the top and adjusting the right offset accordingly. This symmetrical approach between the designer and coder sections creates a balanced, professional layout that clearly differentiates your skill sets while maintaining a cohesive overall design. Begin by targeting the H1 element within the skills box in your CSS. Set its font size to 50 pixels, display it as flex, and align its items to center, ensuring the heading is bold and well positioned. Then, focus on the paragraph within the same container, setting its line height to 23 pixels to improve readability and provide a balanced layout. Now, to introduce a sophisticated interactive component, integrate a modern slider into your skills section. Navigate to your HTML and inside the skills box div right below the coder div, create a new div with the class name slider. Here, specify a reverse property set to true to control the slider's behavior. Instead of hard-coding dimensions in your CSS, declare variables for the slider. Assign it a width and height of 100 pixels each, and define a quantity variable with a value of 9, representing the total number of slider items. Within the slider, add a series of images by creating individual item elements. For the first image, craft a div with the class item and use an inline style to set its position value to 1. Inside this div, embed an image element that links to image1.png, located in your images folder. Repeat this process for 8 additional items, incrementing the position value and updating the linked image for each, ensuring a complete set of slider images. With the HTML structure in place, move back to your CSS to style the slider. Begin by targeting the slider container. Set its position to absolute, position it 5% from the bottom and 20% from the right, and give it a width of 60%. Since the slider's height should match the declared height of each item, 100 pixels, utilize the CSS var function to reference that variable. Also, set overflow to hidden so that any items moving out of the designated area are neatly concealed. To add a touch of finesse, apply a background image to the slider using a linear gradient that transitions from left to right. Configure the gradient to be transparent from 0% to 10% and from 90% to 100%, creating a fading effect on both the left and right edges. This not only softens the appearance of the slider, but also draws focus to the central images. Set the mix blend mode to difference and adjust the opacity to 0.8, ensuring that the slider's elements interact visually with the background in a striking manner. Then, target the list class inside the slider and configure it to display as flex with a width of 100%. To preserve the integrity of the images, ensure that its minimum width is calculated as the width of an individual item multiplied by the total number of items, and set its position to relative so that its child elements align properly. Next, focus on the individual slider items by targeting the item class. Assign each item its proper width and height, and position them absolutely with an initial left offset of 100%, positioning them off-screen to the right at the start. Define an animation named Auto Run for these items, which runs over 10 seconds and loops infinitely. Incorporate a transition on the filter property over 0.5 seconds for smooth visual effects. The animation delay for each item should be determined by a bounce formula, where the delay equals the average time distance multiplied by the item's position minus 1. This calculated delay prevents overlap between items as they animate sequentially. Within each item, ensure the embedded images are fully responsive by setting their width to 100%. Implement the auto run animation so that each item begins 100% off the left side of the container and then moves left by a distance equal to the negative width of one item, creating a continuous sliding effect that feels natural and engaging. To further enhance user interaction, introduce a slider pause feature. When the user hovers over the slider, target the items to set their animation play state to pause, using the important flag to guarantee that this pause takes precedence over other styling rules. Additionally, apply a grayscale filter so that when hovering, the slider items shift to a subdued grayscale tone. However, maintain the original color of the item directly under the mouse pointer by resetting its grayscale filter to 0 upon hover. Through these meticulous CSS configurations and carefully calculated animations, your slider transforms into a modern, visually captivating component. It runs smoothly with an elegant auto-run effect, yet responds intelligently to user interaction, pausing and adjusting color on hover to deliver an engaging and refined user experience. A contact section that invites conversation and connectivity. Begin by structuring the HTML for this section. Immediately below the skills section, create a new section element with a class name of contact section. Within this section, add an H1 element that serves as the title and displays the text, "Let's talk." This title immediately communicates your invitation for engagement. Directly beneath the title, include a div with the class SocialBox. Within this container, insert 3 anchor tags. Each anchor tag should contain both an item, such as a stylized icon or graphic, and a short descriptive text that identifies the corresponding social platform. Next, nest another div, this time with the class Social Icons, inside the social box. Here, add 3 additional anchor tags, each containing a social media icon of your choice, reinforcing your online presence. Following the social box, create a div with the class contact box to house the actual contact form. Start this container with a descriptive paragraph that introduces or explains the form. Then include 3 input elements, each accompanied by a short, descriptive paragraph that clarifies the purpose of the input, for instance, fields for name, email, and subject. Finally, add a button at the bottom of the contact box. This button should feature a send icon along with the text send message, visually prompting users to initiate contact. With the HTML in place, shift your focus to styling the contact section in your CSS. First, target the overall contact section and assign it a width of 80% and a full viewport height, 100 VH. Set its display to flex so that its children can be easily arranged. Use justify content, center and align items, center to center the content both horizontally and vertically. Introduce a gap of 10% between elements for spaciousness, and set the position to relative to allow absolute positioning of inner elements. Next, style the title, the H1 element, within the contact section by positioning it absolutely at 10% from the top and 40% from the left, ensuring it remains prominently visible. For the social box, set its display to flex with a column direction and introduce a gap of 25 pixels between its child elements. Then, target the individual social items, those anchor tags within the social box, and style them with a striking purple color, a font size of 30 pixels, and a margin of 10 pixels to give them ample spacing. For the icons nested in the social icons div, which is now correctly placed inside the social box, set their color to white and apply a top margin of 40 pixels to visually separate them. Turning to the contact box, target the paragraphs within it by setting their maximum width to 400 pixels, adding a top margin of 30 pixels and a bottom margin of 5 pixels. This ensures that your descriptive text is readable and well spaced. Sorry, I made a mistake in the HTML. The social icons div was supposed to be inside the social box div. I've corrected it now. Then, style all input elements inside the contact box. Provide them with padding of 7 pixels on one axis and 30 pixels on the other for comfort. Set the background color to light gray and restrict their width to 80% with a height of 25 pixels. Remove any default border and outline, and finally round the top right and bottom right corners with a border radius of 10 pixels for a modern touch. The final element in the contact box is the button. Set its top margin to 30 pixels and apply the same styling as your card button from earlier. Copy its style properties, excluding any specific positioning rules to maintain a consistent design language across your site. Once complete, your site will naturally lead visitors from your showcase projects and skills to a space where they can reach out, setting the stage for the final step. Moving on to the footer. To create it, begin by adding a footer element directly below the contact section in your HTML. Inside this footer, place an H1 element that serves as a concise label or call to action. Next, transition to your CSS and begin styling the footer. Set its display property to flex so that its content can be effortlessly centered both vertically and horizontally. Position the footer absolutely with its bottom, right, and left properties all set to 0, ensuring that it spans the full width of the viewport at the bottom of the page. Align items and justify content should each be set to center. Adjust the footer's height to 70 pixels for a balanced appearance. To enhance the modern feel, assign the footer a transparent background color combined with a blur effect of 10 pixels. This creates an elegant, glass-like finish. Fine-tune its visual presence by applying a subtle box shadow that lends depth, and set its z-index to 999 so that it remains in the foreground above other elements. Within the footer, style the H1 element by increasing its font size to 30 pixels, ensuring that the text stands out with clarity and style. This concise, bold heading ties the footer into the overall design language of your site. Before moving on to scroll animations, ensure that your site offers a smooth scrolling experience. In your CSS, scroll up just below the body selector and add a smooth scroll behavior for the HTML element. With this adjustment, all navigation between sections will be fluid and visually pleasing. At this point, you have successfully integrated all of your modern elements, from interactive project videos to a sophisticated skills section, a dynamic contact form, and now a stylish footer. With the foundation complete and smooth scrolling in place, you're ready to define your scroll animations to bring dynamic movement to your web page. The first animation we'll create is a blur effect animation. This type of animation is perfect for drawing attention to content as it moves into the center of the screen. Once the content leaves the center, it will fade out, providing a smooth and visually appealing transition. To implement this, we'll use an auto blur class in our HTML. Any element with this class will execute the animation called auto blur animation. We'll use the animation timeline to ensure the animation runs as the user scrolls. Here's how the animation works. At the start, the element will have a blur effect of 40 pixels. When the element is in the center of the screen, the blur effect will reduce to 0 pixels, and the opacity will be fully visible at 1. As the element leaves the center, the blur effect will increase back to 40 pixels, and its opacity will fade to 0. That's all for the auto blur animation. Now, let's implement the blur effect animation on the necessary elements. First, apply the effect to the .HeroInfo class within the Hero section, as well as the Hero section's video. This effect creates a sleek and modern fade effect as the user scrolls down the page. Next, ensure that all 3 videos inside the My Projects section automatically adopt the blur effect, enhancing the visual aesthetics. Finally, apply the blur effect to the social box div in the contact section and extend it to the .social icons. The result is a polished and seamless transition effect across these elements. Moving on to the second animation, create a class named .AutoDisplay following camel case syntax. Define an animation called AutoDisplayAnimation and configure it to run on scroll using an animation timeline. Utilize keyframes to define the animation behavior. For the initial state, set a blur effect of 10px. Adjust the element's position using transform, translate, y, nagas 200px, and set the scale to 0. As the animation progresses and the element reaches the center of the screen, 50% visibility, adjust the opacity to 1. Note, it should be initially set to 0.2. Remove the blur effect, return the element to its original position, and reset the scale to 1. This animation class will be used for all title sections, as well as the .designer and .coder classes inside the skills section. Additionally, apply it to the title of the contact section for consistency. Finally, let's define the last animation for the info cards within the My Projects section. In your CSS, create a class called .fadeInRight and define an animation named FadeInAnimation. Similar to the previous animations, use an animation timeline to trigger it on scroll. At the start of the animation, 0% visibility, set the opacity to 0. Position the element Nigen 500px horizontally, shifting it 500 pixels to the left, and scale the element down to 0.2. As the element moves into the center of the screen between 35% and 65% visibility, restore its opacity to 1, return it to its original position, and reset its scale. Apply a blur effect of 20px. Remove the blur effect. Once the element exits the center, reapply the 20px blur effect for a smooth transition. Now, apply this animation class to all elements with the .info class inside the My Projects section. With these animations in place, we have successfully added all necessary scroll effects to enhance our project's interactivity and visual appeal. Excellent work. Everything is coming together beautifully. Now, let's ensure our project is responsive on both tablet and mobile devices, starting with tablets. For tablets, typically devices with a screen width smaller than 1000 pixels, add a new media query below the existing background video queries in your CSS. Within this media query, begin by targeting the video inside the .black hole box and adjust its top margin to -20 pixels to better fit the layout on smaller screens. Next, style the elements within the hero section. For the H1 element inside .hero info, reduce the font size to 40 pixels, set a maximum width of 400 pixels, and adjust the line height to 40 pixels. For the paragraph within .hero info, assign a maximum width of 300 pixels. For the .hero vid box, set its right offset to 0 to ensure proper alignment on tablet devices. Then, target the video element itself and adjust its height to 500 pixels. Moving on to the info cards section, reduce the font size of the section title to better suit smaller screens. Change the grid layout for the .info cards class to a single column layout by updating the grid template columns. Specifically, for the third card, which contains the glob video, set its grid column to span 2 columns to maintain prominence. Adjust the H1 elements within the .card class to a smaller size. For the H1 inside the third card, modify its bottom position to 25%. Finally, target the glob video within the card and set its height to 65% with a top margin of 5% to ensure proper spacing and visual balance. For the My Project section, apply the following adjustments. Set the section's bottom margin to 300 pixels to provide sufficient spacing. Target the video within the Project Vid box and change its width to 250 pixels. For the .project info container, remove the left padding and apply a left margin of 50 pixels. To properly align the videos and correct their positioning, apply a margin left of -100px to them. Then, for the H1 inside .project info, set the font size to 20 pixels, restrict its maximum width to 200 pixels, and disable text wrapping to maintain layout consistency. Similarly, for the element paragraph inside .project info, set the font size to 10 pixels, disable text wrapping, and limit its maximum width to 200 pixels. If the paragraph does not wrap as expected due to a previously set minimum width, update the minimum width to 0. Lastly, ensure that the H1 element in the footer is scaled down appropriately for tablet devices. By implementing these changes, the design will appear clean and well organized on tablet devices. In the next step, we will proceed to optimize the layout for mobile responsiveness. Let's now make our project mobile responsive for devices with a screen width of less than 700 pixels. Since the design is already optimized for widths above 700 pixels, we will focus our media queries on smaller screens. Uh, to ensure the design remains responsive on mobile devices with a screen width of less than 700 pixels, several adjustments need to be made using media queries. The first step is to keep the navigation bar visible at all times, even when scrolling, by setting its position to fixed and adjusting its height to 50 pixels. Since the full navigation menu is unnecessary on smaller screens, the unordered list and box icons should be hidden by setting their display property to none. A menu icon will later be added for mobile navigation. For the header, reducing the font size of the H1 element to 25 pixels ensures better readability. The video inside the black hole box should have a margin top of MADI 16%. And the hero section's display should be changed to column for better stacking on smaller screens. The auto blur animation should be disabled for mobile devices by setting the animation property to none for the auto blur class. Adjustments to the hero info class include positioning it 5% from the bottom, with the same adjustment applied to the scroll button. The H1 inside hero info should have a line height of 50px, and the hero video box should have a height of 200px, with its top and right position set to 5%. Um, in the info section, the globe video should be set to 100% width to maintain responsiveness. The My Project section requires a bottom margin of 600px, and the project card should have a column-based flex direction with a 20% left margin and a 30px gap. The project info class should have its width set to 85%, while the H1 inside it should have no wrap text wrapping, and the paragraph should have a maximum width of 300 psex. For the My Skills section, the designer class should be positioned at top 15% and left 18%. While the coder class should be positioned at top 50% and left 18%. To refine the styling of the H1 inside the skills box, adjust its margins by setting the margin bottom to 0 and the margin top to 70px. The slider should be positioned at the bottom, and the images inside should have their width set to 60%. In the contact section, the contact section class should have a column-based flex direction, a top margin of 100 pxx, and a bottom margin of 50 px. The section title should be positioned -40 px from the top and 25% from the left. Finally, the H1 inside the footer should have a font size of 17 px. To resolve an issue in the My Projects section where the project-vidbox div does not resize properly, a minimum width of 200 px should be assigned to ensure consistency across different screen sizes. With these refinements, the portfolio website maintains a visually appealing and functional layout across all devices. The final step of our project is to add a sidebar specifically for mobile devices. To begin, we need to add a menu icon to the header that will be visible only on mobile. Inside the header, below the existing elements, create a div with the class name menu icon and insert a menu icon from boxicons. This icon will later serve as the trigger for opening the sidebar on mobile devices. Next, create the sidebar itself by adding a div with the class name sidebar immediately below the header. Inside this container, add another div with the class name close icon and link an appropriate close icon from boxicons to it. Following this, include an unordered list containing 4 list items, each with an anchor tag representing different navigation links such as home, about, projects, and contact. Beneath the list, add a div with the class name social icons and insert 3 anchor tags featuring social media icons. These icons should link to your corresponding social media profiles. In terms of styling, open your CSS file and position your new styles above the animation section. Start by targeting the .menu icon class, setting its font size to 35 pixels, changing the cursor to a pointer to indicate interactivity, and setting its display property to none so that it remains hidden on larger screens. To ensure that this icon only appears on mobile devices, do a query for screen widths less than 700 pixels and set the display of the .menu icon to inline or block as preferred. Apply similar display rules for that sidebar so that it too is only visible on mobile devices when activated by the menu icon. This integrated approach results in a mobile-friendly navigation experience where the menu icon and sidebar appear exclusively on smaller screens, maintaining a clean layout on desktops while offering intuitive navigation on mobile devices. Now let's style the sidebar using CSS to ensure a smooth and visually appealing design. Sidebar should be positioned fixed with right 0, top 0, and bottom 0, covering 80% of the screen width. It should have a transparent background with a 10px blur effect using the backdrop filter property. To ensure it always appears above other elements, we set its z-index to 999, and we add a subtle box shadow for better visibility. Inside the sidebar, we start by styling the close icon. It should have a font size of 50px, a color of light gray, and 10px of left padding. The cursor should be set to pointer to indicate interactivity. Next, we style the unordered list inside the sidebar, adding 20px of left padding. The list items should have no default list styling and a bottom margin of 30px. For the anchor tags inside the list items, we remove the text decoration, set the color to light gray, increase the font size to 30px, Apply a bold font weight of 700 and add a soft text shadow to enhance readability. For the social icons section, we add 20 px of left padding and a top margin of 60 px, ensuring that the text does not wrap. The paragraph tags inside the social icons should have a font size of 35 px, 5 px of padding, and a pointer cursor to signal that they are clickable. Before opening, the sidebar should have a border bottom left radius of 100%, a width of 0, and an opacity of 0. Additionally, it should be positioned 70% from the bottom. To make the sidebar appear when the user clicks the menu button, we define an animation class in CSS, which will be added dynamically using JavaScript to trigger the opening effect. Now let's define the open sidebar class, which will be added to the sidebar every time the user clicks the menu icon. We'll use the power of JavaScript to handle this process. For the open sidebar class, we will define an animation called open sidebar animation that runs for 1.5 seconds in a forwards direction. To make this animation work, we'll use keyframes to transition the sidebar from its initial state, where it has 0 width, 0 opacity, and a bottom position of 70% to its fully visible state with a width of 80%, an opacity of 1 to, a bottom position of 0, 0, and a border radius of 0 steros. To make this work dynamically, we need to use JavaScript. In your app.js file, we first need to select the necessary elements. We grab the sidebar element using document.querySelector and store it in a constant variable named sidebar. Next, we grab the menu icon and store it in a constant variable named menu. Now below this, we add an event listener to the menu icon. This means that every time the user clicks the menu icon, a function will run. Inside this function, we use the classList method to add the open sidebar class to the sidebar. It's important to ensure that the correct class name is used. Once this is set up, clicking the menu icon will trigger the sidebar to open with a smooth animation. However, we also need to allow users to close the sidebar when they click the close icon, so we must handle that interaction as well. Now, let's define the close sidebar class. This will allow us to smoothly close the sidebar when the user clicks the close icon. For the animation, we'll name it close sidebar animation, and it will run for 1.5 seconds in a forwards direction. To define this animation, we'll use keyframes again. The animation should start from the exact position where the open sidebar animation ends. You can simply copy and paste that code, but instead of opening, this animation will transition the sidebar to a width of 0.0, an opacity of 0, a bottom position of 70 cent, and a border bottom left radius of 50 cent to smoothly hide it. Next, we need to handle this interaction in JavaScript. Open your app.js file and select the close icon using document.querySelector, then store it inside a constant variable called close. Now we add an event listener to the close icon. Every time the user clicks the close icon, this event will trigger a function that adds the close sidebar class to the sidebar using the classList method. At this point, we can now open and close the sidebar. However, there's one issue: it only works once. To fix this, we need to first remove the close sidebar class from the sidebar every time the user clicks the menu icon. Similarly, we also need to remove the open sidebar class every time the user clicks the close icon. This ensures that the sidebar can open and close repeatedly without any problems. Everything is now working perfectly. Congratulations on completing this awesome portfolio project. If you ran into any issues or found any part of my explanation unclear, feel free to drop a comment below and let me know. I'll be back soon with another exciting project. So take care and I'll see you next time.